Hi, in this video we're going to take a look at tailoring of a workflow. So for this, we're again going to log into our environment here as our tenant administrator. Somebody with tenant administrator rights would need to log in and make these types of modifications. So we'll go ahead and log in here real quick as tenant admin. We'll be back in Studio for those that watched how to add a custom field and modify a form. So we're going back to administration and Studio from our mega menu. And we're going to be working on the request object. So we can see that here. Just for those that possibly weren't on the previous video or haven't watched it, we added a custom field here called something along the lines of requires QA, something, looking. Oh, look, custom, manual QA needed. Okay, so we're going to use this field as a flag. It's a Boolean field. And we did add it to a form. The form we added it to was without resolution, which is the main form used in a lot of the request processing. So you can see that our field here, manual QA needed, is on the form. It's a Boolean checkbox, and we're going to leverage that field. And what we're going to do is we're going to come into our processes and rules, and we're going to use that field on our service requests, and we're going to make this apply to all service requests. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a loop here effectively from the fulfillment phase that adds an extra step, adds an extra phase to the workflow that says if the needs QA review, what do we call it? I can't remember what we called it now. Manual QA needed. If manual QA is true, then on our workflow, we're going to automatically transition to the manual QA phase, at which point we can create additional business rules and do lots of other things in that phase. And then we'll have a transition out of manual QA into the accept phase, and then continue on the workflow. So that's the intent here. So to do that, we're going to start here. We're going to click on our fulfill phase. And when we click on it, we get these pop-ups. And sometimes you have to hover over it. You get pop-ups. So you can add a transition, you can add a connected phase, you can duplicate the phase, or you can move this phase from one, what we classify as meta phase, these top level groupings, into a different meta phase. So in our case, we're going to just create a add a connected phase, and our new phase will be manual QA. On a side note, you notice the _C going to be automatically added for us. And that indicates that it's a custom field, and it'll get handled slightly differently during upgrades and whatnot, so that helps ease in the upgrade process. Okay, so we're going to add that phase, and we can see that, oh look, we have a new phase that got added. Unfortunately, we don't have the ability to rearrange where things get added. The system automatically figures out where they're supposed to go for best fit, but we have a new phase here called manual QA. Subsequently, we need to add a transition out of manual QA, and we're going to go into, we said we wanted to go into the accept phase. Okay. Okay, so then it moved manual QA up to closer to where I expected it to be. So you can see that as we get into the fulfillment phase, we can get automatically moved to manual QA and into the accept phase. Okay, so now what we need to do though is think about the logic that we need on these two transitions, right? Because there's two ways that we can get from fulfillment into accept. So this phase here, this transition that goes from fulfill into accept, if we come over to our properties, we have some interesting aspects to it. All transitions have one of two types. They're either a manual transition or they're an automatic transition. In the case of automatic transitions, we have a condition that we can write, a logical condition that we can write to utilize that phase. What we are going to do is we are going to actually take that condition. When that is true, we're going to apply that to this manual QA to accept transition. So that basically makes manual QA have an automatic transition to accept to the accept phase, and that condition will be identical between these two lines that go from manual QA to accept and from fulfill to accept. So I literally just copied and pasted that activity there. I also changed this to type automatic, And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click Save. One thing that I do just as a best practice is I save relatively frequently when I'm making workflow modifications. Sometimes you could get, a syntax error, you could get something that's not quite right and the system doesn't like it for whatever reason, and you don't want to build upon that and then lose all your work effectively. So saving frequently, again, especially when modifying workflows. Okay, so for the time being, we're going to leave this transition from fulfill into manual QA a manual transition. We're going to give it a caption of manual QA, and it's not going to have a condition on it. If we wanted to, we could put true in that field so it would always show up. We'll just go ahead and do that since I typed it in. And we're going to go ahead and save that. Again, saving frequently. Saving successfully. Okay, good. So now that we have our extra phase injected into the workflow and we have transitions defined, the intent, obviously, since the fulfill to manual QA is a manual transition, the thought process or the process design, if you will, is that condition will be identified prior to the automatic condition occurring that would automatically bypass the manual QA phase and go into the accept phase. So it's a manual conscious decision that somebody's going to have to move it out to get manual QA, and that's a manual step, and I'll show you how to do that here in just a second. But looking at our manual QA phase, our manual QA phase in and of itself can have some rules. We can have rules upon leaving that phase, entering that phase, before change. You can see the list down here on the right. Documentation is available for each of these. We're going to just go ahead and create a simple rule on entering. So I'm going to go ahead and click add, and I'm going to add a simple rule. We're not going to apply any logic. If you wanted to, you could do an if something, then take action, but we're just going to do a simple rule here just to showcase a little bit how this works. So when this rule fires, and we're setting this to fire on entering of that phase, we're going to take a action, and our action is going to be relatively simplistic. It's just going to be add a comment. So we just select add comment from underneath the action drop down and click OK. And OK. Now what it did is it gave us this set of information over here on the right. And this set of information is things that we need to now continue to populate. Okay, so since we chose add comment, it's going to add comment, and then we're going to say this as. This is the user that will actually be used to create the comment from an auditing perspective. And we're going to set that to current user, and we're going to say OK. And then we're going to set this visibility optional. We're going to set this to so all comments have internal or public visibility, and we're going to set this to internal comment. And the purpose. The purpose is really the purpose of the comment to folks. So we're going to set this to request more information. Okay, and we'll see how this works. Okay, so now that we have those three fields set, we can actually go and define what our comment needs to look like. And for this, we're going to use a function. So this is an automatic function that can get defined. If we didn't want to, oh, actually, you know what? We'll make this a static comment. I was thinking I needed to inject the username in there, but I don't need to because I'm logging the comment as the current user. So the comment will just be moved to the manual QA phase. So we're just going to go ahead and click OK on that. Okay, so that helps us, that got our rule. So every time that somebody clicks this and manually moves from the fulfill phase into the manual QA phase, and it follows this path, upon entering of the manual QA phase, we will get a comment. And that comment will say, move to the manual QA phase, and that comment will be made as though it's the current user. So we basically capture in comments who moved the phase of this particular record into that manual QA phase. Go ahead and save that rule just to make sure everything's happy. when you make workflow modifications, there's lots of things that happen here in the background to validate functionality. So we have that. Okay, so now let's go test our rule. For that, I'm going to go out of Studio and into the service request module. Remove that ID. Let's go take a look at something. Actually, let's filter. We want the request type to be a service request because that's what we care about. And for that matter, we want the phase ID to be fulfill because we're just looking for tickets that we can test this against. Okay, I'm just going to pick this first sample ticket here, this ticket that ends at 12970. It really doesn't matter which ticket you choose. They should all effectively give you a decent test case to validate. So I'm going to drill into that ticket, look at all the extra data that shows up, great. And the thing that we added, so let's just do a quick validation that it works. We added the ability to change the phase to manual QA. Before I do that, I'm going to click on the workflow tab just to confirm that, yep, manual QA shows up and I got my arrows in the right spot, so everything seems to be working. I'm going to now set it to the manual QA phase, just validate that we can move into that phase and everything saves appropriately. Okay, we saved. It looks like we are saved. According to the circle map, for those that aren't aware, each circle in the circle map correlates to one of these meta phases. So the first circle correlates to classification, and the last circle correlates to done. The circle in the middle, therefore, correlates to fulfillment. And since manual QA is in the fulfillment meta phase, that's where the circle shows up. Okay, so let's go check and make sure that the rule fired, and we got a comment. So let's go to our discussions tab, and sure enough, we got a comment that says move to the manual QA phase, and that was automatically generated by the current user. In this case, I'm logged in as tenant admin for Workshop X, and that happened a few seconds ago. With that, it appears as though all of our workflow modifications are functioning. They're in the system, and they're live. So we're good to go on that aspect. With that, that gives you a quick overview showcase on how to make workflow modifications. We quickly added in a new phase, quickly adjusted the workflow to support it, and actually took an action when we entered that phase. You can see how easy it is and robust this is to build out many different workflows as needed, things of that nature. Other ways to modify workflows that we'll take a look at, hopefully in a different video, is on the task plan piece. A lot of requests can leverage task plans, especially when they come from predefined offerings, in order to accomplish many things. We'll take a look at that in a future video, so look forward to that.